Hi, welcome back. In this session, let's see how to create an API specification with the Visual API editor. In previous sessions, we have created the API specification using the text editor, but in this session, we'll use Visual API editor for API creation. So now let's go to Design Center and click on New API Specification. Here we can see that we have two options. The first one is where you can use a text editor, and by choosing the second option we create an API from Visual Editor. If we select the first option, we get a text editor, something like this, where if you want to create an API, you can just add the specifications here in the editor and create the API. So this way we can use the text editor, and this way we can create the API specification which we have seen in previous session. So this time let's use the second option. Let's name the project Employee Visual Editor API. Let's select the second option and we'll create an API. So we already have the employee API, get employees API, where we get the array of employees. We have query parameters, right? We can see the query parameters, and also in the response we have employee information. And each employee has an ID and also the name. These are the properties of an employee. So we have all the information of an employee API. So let's create the same exact API using the Visual Editor. Just give some title for the API, and let's select some protocol, HTTP or HTTPS, and the media type is JSON. The request, response and all the informations are in JSON. And if you want to add the base URI information, you can add it here. And all the details that we are adding in the Visual Editor is reflecting in the preview section, where we can see the API specifications in RAML. Currently we are in preview section, where you can see the RAML information, the API specification information in RAML. So let's add some description for the API. This API gets list of employees. So let's select resources and add the API information. Currently we are creating employees API /employees, and then it's we have to select the HTTP type, HTTP verb, which is a get API. Let's add some display name and description for the API. For now, this API is not secured by any kind of authentication, so let's neglect the secured by option for now. Let's add the query parameter information, department name and joining year. Based on these queries, we can get the employee information, and we don't have any headers. So if you have header information, you can just click on add and you can keep adding the header informations. And in the response sections, in case of success, we get the employee information successfully. Let's add some description. And the response will be in the JSON format. And in case of success, we get array of information. We get, let's see what we get in the response. We get array of employee. Employee is we can consider it as an object with ID and name. You can see that each employee will have employee ID and the name. So response will have array of employee information. So let's create employee data type. employees is an object with ID and name. This employee data type gives employee information. Let's add the property information. ID and name, and also let's give some example for the ID and name. So in the preview sections we can see the data type, employee data type created with ID and name. So now let's go to response and add the response information. In the success response we get employee array. So let's select employee, and each employee will have ID and name information. Yes, we can see that we have a success response, we have query parameters. Yeah, if you want to try and try to call the API, you can just go to try it option and click on send. Now it's not working because we have a base URI. Let's change it to mocking service. Now we are getting the success response. This is a response that we have as an example. So mocked information it is. So let's try to add one more response code. If you have error response code, the list of error response codes, you can keep adding it. 400, 404, and internal server error 500, so on. And if you want to add more information about the response, what we get for failures, you can keep adding. Like if you get the error message or error code, then you can keep adding those information in the response sections. So we have added the query parameters, response, and have created the data types. Let's see, if you want to protect your API, employees API, from some authentication, then you can go to the security scheme and you can select the type of the authentication. Let's select basic authentication, where the API consumer must give their username and password and get the token or something in order to access this API. So now our application will be secured with the basic authentication, and this basic authentication is identified by an authorization header. So if someone wants to access this API, they must pass authorization header. Let's give some example for the authorization header, some token. Currently this employees API is not secured by anything, so let's select the security schema we just created. Now it's secured by basic authentication, which is identified by authorization header. Yes, we have created the API, so let's try to hit the API and get the response. Again, we are in the base URL. Let's change it to mocking service and try to call. We are getting an error because as part of security schema, we had to give the authorization information as well as part of header, right? Because our API is secured currently, so we have to give the authorization information. Let's give some test token because this is just a mocked information. So now we are getting the successful response. So we have seen how to create the API by using the visual editor. Now let's try to publish it to Exchange. And once the API is published to Exchange, the API portal will be created so that API consumer can come to Exchange. It's a marketplace where they can see the information of the API so that they will know what query parameter should be given or what response they will get for success or for failure, so on. So let's go to Exchange. Yeah, here we can see that the API that we have created just now is available in the exchange in our own organization, which is we just published. Let's click on summary and see the API information. We have get employees API, and here we have all the information of the API, the response the API consumer can expect in case of success or failures, the security schema information, and also the list of query parameters. So all the API information is available in the API portal. They can try to hit the API and can understand more about the API. Currently we don't have the authorization header added, so let's add it. We are getting the successful response. This is a mocked example that we have given in the API specification. So this way we can use Visual Editor for API creation. And if someone wants to edit the API, they can just select the API from here, or they can click on view code from the exchange as well. So here let's click on edit RAML, and you can go to text editor, and if you want to add more information about the API, then you can come to the text editor anytime and add the information. If you want to add one more query parameters, so you can just edit and add the information. You can do the modifications. Yeah, that's it for today. Thank you. See you in next session.